It is Coffee with Humans with my new friend Eyvindur. Welcome to Coffee with Humans.
Thank you.
Man,
I finished my coffee already, but It's, it was a
it's a
very small cup, so
that's a little espresso cup.
yeah. I got an espresso machine for my birthday
Really?
from my wife, so now I drink way too much espresso, but it's lovely.
I had espresso yesterday. I use a mocha pot, Italian mocha
Yeah,
pot, and which the size I have makes technically three espresso cups. And
yeah,
I had that, and then I had a breakfast to go to with an associate, and then I just like cranked down regular coffee, and I was disturbingly wired
yeah.
after that.
I think my caffeine receptors are broken now. I just fall asleep if I drink too much coffee, unless I do it in the afternoon, in which case, just sniffing coffee will make me not sleep.
Right? I learned that lesson a long time ago. Like, watch out, because there is a magical line, and for me, it's somewhere around noon, 1 o'clock. And if I have coffee after that, I don't know what it is, but it's like it lasts like 10 hours.
This was probably a mistake because it's now 6 o'clock and
Hmm.
I won't sleep tonight.
So 6 p.m. Doing some
Yeah,
math here, you're 6 hours ahead of me in Central Time, U.S.,
sounds
which
about right.
puts you on GMT, Greenwich Mean Time. Or yeah.
That's right. Yeah. And
So
we don't do daylight savings or anything, so I'm always GMT. That's just my always.
God bless you. We should not be doing daylight savings time either. I don't. It's a broken record. Every year we're like, oh no, it
Yeah.
skips.
Yeah. 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 I lived in London for a year and experienced that weird thing of changing the clock, and it was just too much for my head to like. What am I gaining an hour? I don't understand.
It's odd because here in the States, we've just to the east of where I'm at, there's there's the line, and you should be going an hour ahead, but there's this tiny little pocket like in the middle of this area that refuses to change the time. And
Yeah.
so you could drive like literally cross this street, go to this other one, and then all of a sudden like there's no there's like no chime change, and then also you're
I,
back. Like, what is what's happening here, right?
I love looking at maps and how humans have created these weird lines on maps. You know, you look at borders. There's this great, I don't know if it's a myth or something. I've never seen this and it's probably not real, but somebody told me once that somewhere in Africa, I think it's in Africa rather than Asia, there's a border that goes like this because somebody had a glass of bourbon on the, and just sort of drew the line around it. And so, so these old imperialist bastards drew all these maps just willy nilly. And
Mm-hmm.
it's the same with time zones when it comes to Iceland. If you look at the lines on the map, where Iceland is we're in the same time as England, obviously, because Greenwich is in England, except they do daylight saving. So for part of the year we're on the same, but a part of the year we're not. But we're actually a lot further west. So the time zone line goes like this, just, and Iceland is like in a completely different time zone than it should be, because somebody said, "No, let's be on British time because that's where the stock market is," or something. I don't know.
I don't know. So what's Iceland up to these days? I've never actually been there. I think that our intro said that it'd be great to have
Yeah,
this chat in Iceland, but
yeah, in a hot spring, and the picture was the Blue Lagoon, which is not a hot spring.
damn it.
It's a chemical waste. It's a puddle of chemical waste, is what it is. I'm not even kidding. That's what it is.
Really?
It's yeah, it's the water is a byproduct from a silicon plant next door. So that's what people are bathing in this really expensive. No Icelander ever goes there because it's way too expensive now. When I was a kid, you could go there for like, $5, and you just go in there and sit and enjoy it. And they had this little shack where you change and shower, and that was it. Now it's like, I don't know, $100 $150, something like that. And it's this fancy spa experience, and they moved it actually from since I was a kid. It was in a different spot, and then they said, "No, let's move it over there." So it's not a natural hot spring at all. It's just a man-made chemical
Oh
thing.
my gosh. Is it
But
safe?
apparently it's apparently it's very good for you. It's silicon. It's good for the skin and stuff. So
Okay.
yeah. It used to be mostly the people who went there were people that suffered from psoriasis and eczema and stuff. They
Oh.
would go there because it had healing properties for the skin.
Well, and if it's silicone, it's like naturally abrasive properties as well, I would assume.
Yeah, there was this mud, like this white mud that people would smear all over their faces and stuff like this.
That came right from the plant.
Yeah. You just scoop it up from the bottom and smear it. Now you buy it in jars for like hundreds of dollars. But what are we up to? Well, we're doing pretty well COVID wise now.
Yeah.
It's been up and down, but now I'm very lucky. I work in theater, and now I'm actually performing again. I think we're one of the few theaters in the world that is actually open right now, which is great. We can. I'm in the big auditorium. We moved from the small auditorium to the big one, and we can have up to 200 people for 100 adults and 100 children. It's a children's show, so
Wow.
but it's a 500-person auditorium, so it's a bit sparse, but it's lovely to be able to perform in front of humans.
Yeah.
So that's that. They're cracking down on the border now, so we are not.
Mm.
I forget exactly what they're doing, but everybody has to be screened for COVID before they can enter the country. And if they refuse to be screened, they have to go to a mandatory quarantine for 2 weeks or something. So,
Oh wow.
which is good.
I
So
suppose.
yeah, so we're slowly eking our way out of the whole mess. But things have been tough. I own a small tourism business, which is not doing great.
Is that an
we've been-
understatement?
Yeah, well, I mean, we're lucky in that we're tiny, so we can sort of afford to just wait. We don't have any employees or anything like that, so we're fortunate.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, we've been closed for 9 months.
Mhm.
That's it.
What is it? What it's been like trying to reinvent during that time, or are you just kind of eking out your time?
I've been fortunate in personally in that I do subtitling work, and that sort of went up to begin with. It's been going down again now, but when like last summer, it was very busy because they just the TV station that I do most of my work for just said, well, let's buy a lot of stuff because nobody's doing anything, so they need stuff to watch. So that was good. But now, of course, they haven't been producing a lot of TV in the world, so that's going down a bit. But other stuff is going up, fortunately. So I've been very lucky. Haven't been able to perform music, obviously. I had like 3 gigs all of last year. Which was sad. But I was able to finish an album. Actually, I meant to release that album last October, but I postponed that because of COVID, and it's now slated for May. And I'm hoping that I can do a live show or two when that's out. Who knows? Knock on wood. And so, but other than that, I didn't really do a lot of streaming stuff, which most of my colleagues did. I'd been experimenting with streaming a lot before that. For a couple of years, I'd been sort of trying out doing streaming, doing online busking, as they call it. There's a great site called Street Jelly, which is they call it online busking, and I did that a little bit a while ago, and I tried my hand at Twitch and other platforms. And then when COVID hit, I just everybody started doing it, and I said, nah, let's not. Then let's just allow these guys to take care of this stuff, and I'll just work on my things. But other than that, I wrote a novel and I went back to school. So
Oh wow.
you know, just tried to like you said, reinvent. That's the thing.
Yeah.
And I've been working on my website and trying to improve my marketing as an artist, and restarted my podcast, which had been dormant for a while. So you just tried to figure out new things,
Yeah.
learn
Try
new
to-
skills, that sort of stuff.
Yeah. Try and move the ball, like one, I don't know, 1 yard down the field type of thing, I guess.
Yeah.
So you're a musician, I hear. What kind of music and how long you been doing it? What do you play even?
I play a harp.
Oh,
No.
snap.
Wow. No, that's not. Well, I mean, I play that.
That's what's
It's an auto harp.
an auto harp. Yes. Thank you.
I've had this for a while. I just took it home. I'm using it in the show that I'm in.
Okay.
And it was very off key, and can you hear that?
Yeah.
Anyway,
Oh, and you have it mic'd up too, it looks like.
Yeah, I've been using it for the show I'm in, for the theater show.
Awesome.
And it was off key, and I had to tune it, so I brought it home because it takes like an hour to tune. But no, I mostly play guitar, and a little bit of piano. But I'm a singer songwriter. I do folk, country, alt country type stuff. Americana is the best shorthand for it, I guess.
Okay.
I get compared to Tom Waits and Neil Young a lot. I mean, Tom Waits was when I started writing this kind of music, Tom Waits was my main influence, and then I've grown from there, I think. So that sort of a little bit rough around the edges, folk rock, Americana type stuff.
Okay. Interesting. Folk rock Americana from Iceland.
Yeah. It's folk is universal, right? It's
I don't know. I'm an artist, but I'm a musician, but I don't.
Oh, there's a question. Yeah, you can find my original music. There's a link. It's onebadday.rocks. That's where there's a free EP there to download.
I've got that onebadday.rocks. I was trying to look this up. It could
Is it broken?
No. It's not broken at all. It's just clicking some buttons.
Yeah.
Yeah, for our listener, onebadday.rocks, and then artemis.net is his podcast.
Yeah. Oops. I've lost you. Hang on. Oh, there you go. I was just checking that to make sure it works.
Ooh, curl up by the fire and relax with this Icelandic singer-songwriter. Makes you laugh, cry, and quite possibly fall in love. Oh, what?
See, it's marketing.
That is marketing. I want to fall in love.
Yes. Don't we all?
This is good.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
How long have you been doing this whole podcast / music thing? It seems like the two are kind of together in some ways.
Well, in some ways, yes. The podcast was kind of a way for me. I mean, first of all, I've been doing the music thing for 20 years. I guess something like that. And it took me. It's been a long journey and a hard one, and it's taken me a while. I've gone through a lot of anxiety and depression, and I don't know. Just it's taken me a while to get to the place where I'm confident as an artist. And it took me about 10 years to get my first solo album recorded and released, just because of lack of self-esteem and lack of confidence and all of that stuff. And by the time I finally got that out, I didn't really know the first thing about how to get myself out there as an artist. So I've spent the last couple of years really trying to work on that. And now I'm actually, like I said, I went back to school. I'm now studying marketing, getting a master's degree in marketing. Because like a lot of artists, I had kind of a negative view of marketing. Even though I've done a lot of it, I just didn't realize that's what I was doing. So this podcast, I started actually a couple of years ago, and then it sort of was dormant, and then I brought it back. And that's kind of a way for me to learn more about business and marketing for artists. And also there are certain things that I know. So I started this podcast as a way to connect with other creative entrepreneurs, if you will, sort of not necessarily artists, but mostly artists that are, sort of self-employed artists or professional or semi-professional, or just creative business people in general, to learn from each other. So I bring on people that I believe that I can learn from, and I interview them, and I try to pick their brains about, if there's something that I don't really know about, like networking or social media or stuff that it's not my strong suit. I try to gain insights and learn, and hopefully listeners learn as well. So yes, they are kind of interconnected, because these are a lot of the things that I've sort of discussed on there and gotten people to teach me about, I have been able to use to get my own art out there.
So the process of putting the podcast out there and discussing things online, and in combination with, it seems like it is in combination with your learning process of becoming more confident and open to expressing yourself, and all these things that you learn, you're just kind of paying it forward, but you're utilizing them as well. It's like a learning process / a growth process / an education process for others.
That's the idea, yeah, and hopefully that's what comes through as well. Yeah, that's I'm very passionate about it. And I've always been, like, my main drive, I think, has always been to learn more. I think that's I don't know if it's gonna sound too superlative, but that's like the meaning of life. That's what makes life interesting. That's, because otherwise, if you're not learning new things and you're not growing as a person, then you're either going forward or backward, right? There's no standing still, and
right.
So
because
I always
because the world keeps moving on, and if we're not moving on with it, then we're
going backwards.
Yeah.
So I always feel like, and I've always been, now I'm getting my third university degree, which is, that's
intense, man.
Yes, but that's over a long period of time, like over a 20-year period. It's not like I've been doing them back to back. But that's a good thing about living in a Nordic country where education is free. You can do that sort of stuff. But I've always been learning. I do a lot of online courses, and in between I've done offline courses as well. And I did a songwriting course at one point, and where I actually also learned recording techniques. So now I actually have a lot of skills and that. So it's all sort of come together to bring me to where I am. So I think learning is what it's all about, and I just that's sort of what I try to do in that podcast as well, is learn. It's just a learning process for me. It's a very selfish thing.
Right. Yeah, I get it. I've been having this discussion, sort of an ongoing discussion with a couple people about this idea of investing in yourself, and the importance really of investing in oneself, not only from a like a hard skills sort of standpoint, like you learned recording techniques, but from a soft skills growth standpoint, to deal with your own self, your hurts, your hangups, the things that hold you back from doing the thing that you want to do. You're a recording artist, you want to put your recordings out there, but if you have this gate that you just
Yeah.
can't seem to get out of because it keeps saying you don't belong outside this gate, you're never going to go
Yep.
outside the gate. You're never going to be able to use the skills that you have and bring them to the world.
Yeah, exactly. And it's all about getting outside your comfort zone. I think and it's scary, and it's off. And at one point I said, I'm going to say yes to everything. I'm just going to, every time somebody offers me to something, an experience or whatever that I have never done before, I'm going to say yes.
Okay.
And I did that for a while. I don't do that anymore because you got to say no as well. I sort of realized that saying yes to everything is a terrible way to live long term, but it did offer me some interesting experiences. But one of them was actually terrible. I accepted a PR job. To be fair, in the beginning, it was only meant to be a copywriting job, which I had done. I worked as a copywriter at an advertising agency years ago. And I thought that was all, but then they said, we can't really afford to pay you a lot, but we have this extra chunk of money set aside for PR. So if you do both, then we can pay you a little more. And I was like, yes. And that was not good. I was horrible at PR. So it doesn't always work, but it was nice. And I tried to push myself outside of my comfort zone as much as I can. And there was, I don't know where this comes from. This is a great quote that I saw somewhere. It's, if you're afraid to do something, that's probably something you should do. And within reason, I guess, there are things that I'm afraid of that I'm not going to do. I'm not going to go bull riding. That's just not a sensible thing for a 40-year-old man to do. But there are things that I like to challenge myself to do things, and I think they always, in some way, they always make you grow.
Yeah, the saying I have for myself, and sometimes I'm really good at living this, and sometimes I'm really terrible.
Yeah.
Is fear is the gateway.
Yeah,
it's just an indicator. Fear is an indicator that something is outside of our norm, and typically there's a fear of what happens right after you go out through the gateway. That's the issue for me, at least, in a lot of cases. And so really it's fear of the unknown, which is I used to tell my kids this, something like, there's a saying, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. That's the saying. So I would tell them, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of the wisdom, but fear of the unknown, that's the beginning of psychosis. And because fear of the unknown could really bind you up and lock you into this place where it's just like, there's no way out, and it becomes bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And then finding your own sanity is like finding a needle in a haystack. Because like, okay, great. You want to do something, but you're so afraid of it, you don't do it. And then it's like, and I didn't do it. And then that compound, instead of just walking through and going up. Okay, that's what it was. It's never quite as bad on the other side as you think it's going to be.
There's a great, when I went to therapy because I had like a burnout experience, and I had to, like, this massive anxiety, and I had to go to therapy, and it was a whole mess. But it was, afterwards it was great. But
right.
Well, because I got medication that works, and now I feel better. But when I went, he told me a couple of great things. First of all, when you have anxiety and you avoid the thing that you're afraid of, it's a self-fulfilling, or you're sort of self-medicating, and you're reinforcing the anxiety. So if you have a fear of dogs, and every time you see a dog, you cross the street to avoid the dog, then you're making yourself feel better by not getting close to the dog. So your fear of dogs is going to get worse and worse and worse, because you're reinforcing it. You're conditioning yourself to feel better when you avoid dogs by never confronting it. And one of the biggest things that when you have panic attacks, which I used to have from anxiety, what would happen was it got to be such a nasty feeling physically that I started to, the minute I started to feel a little like inkling of anxiety, it would escalate because I was so afraid of that feeling.
Right.
So my therapist said, the next time you feel it, make an effort to have the worst panic attack you've ever had. And I said, all right,
Okay.
challenge accepted. And so I the next time it happened, I was like, all right, here it comes. All right. I sat in a comfortable chair and said, all right, I'm going to panic the hell out of myself now. And it didn't happen because I wasn't afraid of it anymore. It was now in my brain, the panic attack was actually desirable because I was because we've gone through this. Nobody has ever died from panic. That's not possible. Anxiety doesn't kill you. It can't unless it's like depression and you lose or whatever. But, it's like physically you can't your heart won't explode from anxiety. That's not going to happen. So there's nothing, the worst thing that can happen is like discomfort and then it goes away. And when I started to think of, all right, so let's just see what happens. This is exciting. Now this is an experiment. It's an uncharted thing. And I'll make myself like be Mr. Panic Attack, and it never happened. And I've not really had a serious panic attack since, which was amazing.
It seems also that by doing that exercise, it puts you in control.
That's exactly what it is. Attack. Yeah. And one of the things that has been very helpful, going back to where you were saying, the fear of the unknown, is to actually go there. I mean, our imagination is very powerful. Mm-hmm. And I often talk about this. I often say that imagination and creativity is what makes us human. That's what separates us from other animals. It's not language. There are other animals that communicate with some forms of language. And it's not logic, I think, because there have been tests that have shown, rats can learn to play hide and seek. And there's logic in that. So that's not it. I think it's creativity and imagination. We can create things that haven't existed before.
Right.
And I don't think other animals can do that.
Right. Exactly.
So we can create scenarios in our head. And that's why we have anxiety, because we create these imaginary scenarios that don't exist and probably never will. And but then somehow we stop at that, and that's where we get stuck in these imaginary scenarios, and we can't get out of them. And one of the things that I was taught by this therapist, he said, well, imagine the worst thing that can possibly happen, and that's where you destroy your fear of the unknown. Because if you just seriously go through, okay, so if something that is actually genuinely anxiety inducing, which is money. Everybody has anxiety about money at some point,
right?
I guess, unless you're Trump or something. A Trump, Donald Trump probably does all the time, but his kids probably don't. Anyway,
who knows? I
don't know.
We don't know.
That's a mystery, but there are probably people who do. But most of us, we have that's like a real big stressor in our lives is money. Mm-hmm. And that's something that I would have panic attacks over. And then I started doing this exercise saying, all right, so what's the worst thing that can happen if I don't have enough money now? Well, I can't pay my bills. All right, so if I can't pay my bills, what's the worst thing that happens? Well, I'll pay the bills that I can pay, and the other ones will roll over, I guess, and I'll try to pay them later. And then if I can, what's the worst thing that can? Well, the worst thing that can happen is I'll go bankrupt. That's in my reality. That's the absolute. Obviously, I live in a place where that's true. There are people who actually can live where it's a life and death situation. For me, I'm lucky to live in a place that has a decent, welfare system, and
sure.
nobody's. I'm not going to end up on the street. I'm not going to starve to death. My children are not going to do that. The worst thing that can happen is bankruptcy, which I've actually gone through. It was fine. And starting over. basically.
Yeah.
So, taking it step by step through the worst case scenario that I can imagine in my head, nothing actually kills me.
Okay.
And so that's so the fear of the unknown, you can kind of take it away by just saying, well, it's unknown, but I can sort of imagine what would happen. And 99% of cases, that's not. But if the consequences actually are very dangerous, then my anxiety actually did a positive thing for me, and I can avoid that now.
Right.
So,
So that process of starting over, it
Yeah.
sounds to me like that probably is a scary process or scary thought in your head.
Not really.
No,
Not anymore. I've gone through it.
It was.
I've done it. It was, yeah.
Right.
But then I did it, and it was
and it's
fine.
totally fine.
Yeah. Well, I mean, not
So-
totally fine. I'm still
Yeah.
my credit is not great, and
Sure.
yeah, but it's the worst. I can't have a credit card. I have a prepaid credit card, which is fine. Well, actually, I probably do now. It's been a while ago. It should be fine now. But
it seems like a lot of the things that we build up in our minds as necessary or critical or life and death, like you talk about, are really not. They are benefits of living in an industrialized society in some cases, that we can absolutely do without. We just
Yes.
don't. We just are more afraid to tell our neighbor that we're doing without them.
Yeah, and and that's another thing where maybe sometimes if you think, could I do without this, and it causes you fear, then maybe that's what you need to be without. And I'll tell you what happened to me. About 5 months ago, I was having some issues. I mean, like a lot of people, I started eating and drinking too much during social distancing period. We didn't really have a lockdown, but we had a lot of social distancing, and I would spend.
Yeah.
And I work from home anyway, so it was fine for me. But it was there was no social interaction really, and
Yeah.
so a lot of food and drink, and so I gained a lot of weight, and I couldn't really afford that, and so I said, all right, so I need to do something about this, and beer is not doing me any favors, and the thought crossed my mind is maybe I should just stop drinking. And I had a minor anxiety attack, and I thought, this indicates that alcohol might not be the best presence in my life. So I just gave it up.
Yeah.
And I'm very happy that I did. I feel a lot better now. Physically and mentally, I'm doing a lot better than I was, because for me, alcohol was not a great thing. It's I mean, it is a toxin, and if you're there are a lot of people that can handle it just fine, but I'm at least of late, I'm not one of them. So then that was I think another example of that sort of little fear being a spark to say, all right, this is probably the right way to go. Let's follow the fear.
Yeah, follow the fear, follow the anxiety. The saying comes to my mind: the antidote to anxiety is action.
Oh yeah, that's a great saying. I love that. The antidote to anxiety is action. Yeah,
because these are things that I know these things to be true. But
yeah,
living them, doing them. Oh, that's something different, right?
It is.
And it's easy to say at the antidote to anxiety is action, but if we dissect that for a moment, it's like it absolutely is. The anxiety is just an energy. It's just an energy buildup, kind of like a feedback loop, where all of a sudden that energy just feeds on itself, feeds on itself, feeds on itself, feeds on itself, feeds on itself. And the bigger it becomes, the more insurmountable it becomes, because it's like, what do I do with this energy? I don't know what to do with it. And the only way to escape that is to do something. You have to move from that present reality into something different. And that requires action. No amount of sitting there will ever take away the anxiety. You have got to take an action. It's just the question is, what is the action? And I think a lot of times people, I know for me, sometimes get stuck in those feedback loops, hoping that some external force is going to jettison me out of the feedback loop. And it's probably not. At least not
No,
in
yeah.
short order. It's just going to get worse and worse and worse. And like you talk
Yeah.
about, and I've experienced this too, during COVID, ate too much, drank too much, moved too little. And okay, so I'm, 20 pounds heavier. It's like, all right, well, now I look back on it and go, there was every opportunity at any point in time
Yeah.
to not do this. You even know you're smart enough. You've been down this road
Yep.
to know that this is not going to lead to any place good, and yet you do it anyhow.
Exactly. And the what I find when it comes to that feedback loop, even if you just the tiniest step that you can take will usually snap you out of it. Going back to the money example, when you got bills coming in and you can't pay them or whatever, and you've got creditors are threatening you and all of that stuff. In my experience, just picking up the phone and making a phone call, say, how can we? Is there something we can do? Is usually very, very easy. It's the smallest thing you could possibly do. You can't pay it, but I can't pay right now. Can we? I don't know. Can I pay you 10% now and the rest or whatever? And in my experience, that usually works because they want their money anyway. So it's either I can pay you a little bit or nothing. But whatever it is, just taking that tiny first step, even if it doesn't solve the problem, it usually snaps me out of the feedback loop.
Yeah. Well, doing nothing doesn't help. So
Yeah.
the action really is the only.
That said,
only
I do nothing about a lot of things all the time.
Right? Me too.
It's not like I'm this. Oh yeah, of course. The minute something comes up, I'll act. No. That's not how it happens at all.
The thing I'm doing nothing about is probably the thing I'm most terrified about.
That's usually the way it is. Yeah. And but sometimes just realizing that there's nothing that you can do if you've checked, if you've made, well, I've tried and there's nothing to be done, then all right, well,
right. Check the box, move on.
Fear's gone,
So it all sounds simple, right? I mean, we're kind of making light of these things, even though I think we intuitively know, I certainly know how stuck a person can become in these moments. It strikes me as super important that people have somebody to go to, have somebody to talk with in those moments, because getting yourself out of it is not an option.
No, absolutely. And yeah, I mean, I think just talking to somebody, and there's so much stigma around these issues about all this mental health stuff, whether we're talking depression, anxiety, or something more serious. Well, I mean, not that that's not that can be extremely serious, obviously. And I've unfortunately seen more than my share of friends and acquaintances lose the battle, and that's why it's so important that you talk to someone if that's what you're going through. I mean, I've been fortunate enough to have been just raised in a household where you talk about your problems, and there's you talk about your feelings, and I've sought professional help when I've needed it, which can be expensive. That's expensive here too, but that's, again, it's investing in your life. It's such a great loss of quality of life when you're dealing with this stuff on a daily basis. There's there's a lot of talk about invisible problems like chronic pain, and this is chronic mental pain. And so, talking to people is so important. I also find that habits work very well to deal with these things. And
in what way?
In that instilling in yourself like tiny habits. There's a book called Atomic Habits that I actually haven't read all of it, but I've read parts of it. It's a great book, which is, the idea is that big changes are very, very hard, and they're almost impossible to pull off. I mean,
Hmm.
changing your entire lifestyle is something that is just extremely hard to do. But changing tiny aspects of your lifestyle is very easy to do. And when when you compile a lot of these small changes, that can really change your life. And ever since I was a teenager and I first started dealing with depression and stuff like that, I've had little habits that help me to I don't know how to phrase this. Just sort of have a slightly lighter outlook on life. They're not. They're sort of like just. I guess the when I started doing this, I had never heard of mindfulness, but I think it's they're kind of like these little moments of mindfulness, and I've always had the habit of stopping and taking in those little moments where I just feel a tiny little glimpse of happiness. Um, Nobody's happy all the time. That's not a thing. But the more you can enjoy the little moments of happiness that you find randomly throughout your day, just like noticing, I don't, you have a in your part of the world you use a 12-hour clock, but we use the 24-hour clock. And so when it's 22:22, that's just nice. It's just a moment of it's just a nice thing to look at your uh, phone or your
Yeah.
clock or whatever, and it's 22:22. That's nice. Um, when I sit down on my couch and I put a blanket over my legs and my feet are tired, that moment when your feet are up for the first 30 seconds or something, you feel that tingling as the blood's sort of redistributing around your legs, and you have a nice blanket on top. You know that feeling?
Hmm.
It's lovely. It's just the loveliest feeling there is. And just taking the moment, no matter what you're doing, maybe you're in the middle of something boring or awful or something, but just taking that moment to enjoy that little tingle is just wonderful. Same with, you've been out in the cold and you go into a warm shower. It's a similar feeling. You feel your warmth coming back.
Hmm.
And just those little things are so important. So that's like a habit that I've cultivated throughout my life of just making sure that I enjoy. So no matter how crappy my day is, I'll always have a few of those little moments. Noticing, obviously, here we have northern lights, and you see them all the time. But you never really get used to them because they're always amazing.
Yeah.
Seeing a sunset is always magical,
Hmm.
and just making sure you don't take those little nice moments for granted, I think, is a great habit to get into. And then there are in recent years, I've gotten into trying to instill more of those habits, like journaling before I go to bed is great for just turning my brain off, so I don't lie awake thinking. I think that's a an aspect of anxiety that a lot of people have, and people don't associate it with anxiety, but I think it tends to be a lot of people. They say that they think so much when their mind starts racing when they lie down to go to bed, and even if they're exciting thoughts and I'm so excited to try this and do that and whatever, or the stuff that I'm doing at work, but I think it's always a bad thing because it interferes with your sleep, and I
Hmm.
think it's a form of anxiety where your brain hasn't completely worked out everything that's happened during the day, and so just sitting down and writing it on a piece of paper kind of gets it out of your head and onto that piece of paper, and you can, then I can go to bed and just read a novel and go to sleep.
Yeah. All these things I think are super important. I read a long time ago that we can rewire our brain to either see good things or see bad things
Yeah.
because we tend to see whatever we're looking for. And this idea of living in just these little moments goes back to the concept of you grow the trees that you water.
Mhm.
And so if you want to grow good trees, water the good trees and
Yeah.
dump the bad ones. And all too often, and I'm totally lump me in this mix as well. Like I think every human that we too often get stuck like looking at every bad thing or every challenging thing and letting
Yeah.
and just watering and like we talked about before, it's like it becomes its own thing because we kept on watering it.
Yeah.
And naturally then we end up in that feedback loop, or in a forest of challenging things. It's like, wait a second, hold on, relax
Yeah.
for just a moment. None of those were big until you kept watering them, and
Mhm.
then you missed all these great moments of just living along the way.
Yeah. And I had to train myself uh, to allow myself self-care,
Hmm.
um, because I've been self-employed for so long. And being self-employed is great, but it's also terrible because your boss is usually an asshole, and because it's so hard to take the time. Your head is constantly there. You need to,
Yeah.
nobody gives you time off. You need to take time off, and and in Iceland, people get 5 weeks per year of vacation time, and for the past 15 years, I'm lucky if I get one.
Hmm.
And if I get that 1 week, that usually just means I need to work double the week before so I can afford it. And so working 6 or 7 day weeks is pretty common for me.
Okay.
Even if I'm only working a couple hours on the weekends, it's still not time off. I'm there, and my mind is there, and so that's something that I had to just train myself to do. And so I started playing video games because that's usually, I need to focus on them, so it kind of takes my mind away from other stuff. Whereas if I'm watching a movie or reading a book, my mind can sort of wander. I had this great experience as well. I started, for some reason, I have a little bit of a masochistic streak that's been surfacing lately, and I was in a bookstore and I picked up James Joyce's Ulysses.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I studied literature, and that's one book that I always said I'm never reading that. I'm not subjecting myself to that.
Yeah.
And then I was in a bookstore and I said, why not? And
Mhm.
is the fear, I said, I've been terrified of this book for 20 years. I'm gonna see what I can do. And I've been reading it, and it's wonderful,
Hmm.
but it's tricky. And about a month ago or so, I had a little bit of a like depressive anxiety couple of days, and I just felt terrible. I couldn't focus on anything. I couldn't do anything, and my mind was preoccupied with all of these things, and I just felt like crap. And so I just said, I'm just going to sit down and read. And I picked up Ulysses, and I discovered it's fantastic for mindfulness. Because if you're
Okay.
reading that book, your brain has no capacity for anything else. It pushes everything else away because it's so dense and so complicated, and you need to focus so much. You need to read the same line 5 times and try to figure out, what does that even. Oh, right. Oh, I see. And so it just, my mind just was free after that. It's just fine. I made it through a whole page. I can do anything now.
Well, I think the principle is good, whether it's Ulysses or whether it's something else.
Yeah.
Whatever we fill our minds with, we become consumed at some point with, and so be careful about what you fill your mind with, and
Yeah.
if it's in relearning or unlearning some habits that keep us trapped in some of these feedback loops of anxiety and fear, um, we need to not allow that space to be open, because we know the path. The fear and the anxiety comes back in much quicker because we know what it's like. That's the norm, right?
Yeah.
Once we break that habit, we need to fill that space with something else that keeps our minds in a better flow. And then I
Yeah.
think invite people around us to assist us with that process.
Yeah, and I think that's also, you don't really break habits; you replace them.
Right.
I think that's uh, you don't um, you don't stop eating unhealthy foods and replace it with something that you hate. That doesn't work. You need to replace the unhealthy things that are bad for you with something that you actually like. And um, I think that we're all much more malleable than we think we are.
Mm.
And that's something that's been dawning on me lately, because when I stopped drinking, that's something that I didn't really think I would be able to do easily. I think like subconsciously, I think I always just accepted that, no, yes, I drink. I have I own part of a brewing company, and I've been a home brewer for years and years. And so that was kind of like an excuse that I can't, that's a part of my job. And, so like excuses like that. And then I found it was much easier than I thought it would be, just because my mindset changed like that. And I think we need to be critical I think just critical thinking is such a key thing in everything. And we shouldn't take anything at face value. We should always examine it critically and think, well, is it really? And and can we even believe ourselves?
Yeah.
And we need to just examine everything, and if you think, no, I can't do that, then it's 90% in 90% of cases you probably can. And if you really want to do it, then you can. Of course, then this starts getting in the way. You're getting your own way. And I think
Yeah.
the hardest thing to do is to be able to call your own bullshit.
Right.
Pardon my language. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that.
You are.
Okay, so good. But just to call your own bullshit, because we lie to ourselves a lot. And yeah, it's, again, it always comes back to that feedback loop that we're all in. I mean, that's how a lot of bad things happen in, like, the world.
Right.
You see these people that get caught up. I've seen people in Iceland as well get caught up in these conspiracy theories. I've seen people ruin their lives by subscribing to weird conspiracy theories that don't make any sense at all, but they've gotten caught in some weird feedback loop that they can't get out of. And
Right.
they've lost their families and their jobs because of this stuff. And let's not get into the politics of that, but when it comes to you get stuck in that loop with yourself as well, and you tell yourself, no, this is who I am.
Well, you
This
said it
is
earlier, this idea of creation and creative energies, and
Yeah,
I think we are masters at creating.
yeah,
Uh, and too often we create something that is not real. It's just what we created. And
yeah,
it's not what we had to create. It's just what we decided to create. It is just this thing, this whole world of, whether it's a world of fear, a world of anxiety, a world of hate, a world of love, a world, like, create what you want to create. And and to your point of, we need to be very careful about what we take into our bodies. Just like you talk about, eating better, drinking better, your body is designed, your physical body is designed to work on certain things, right?
yeah,
Certain nutrients. Our minds are designed to work on certain nutrients as well, certain thought patterns. And we need to be very critical and careful about what we accept and what we reject, because when it starts to come in over time, we become what we consume. And when we
yeah,
look back, we go, damn it, I'm 20 pounds heavier than I was. Well, I'm more anxious than I used to be, or I'm
yeah,
more fearful than I used to be, or I feel like the world is a worse place than it used to be. It's like, well, relax for just a moment. Did you
yeah,
what part of that were you just responsible for creating? And it is your own viewpoint. And when we know, like you say, we know certain people, we look at and you're like, oh my God, like, I don't even know what planet you're on. You're so far off from
yeah,
where you used to be or where you were, and it's and yet we are always offered at any point in time the chance to reset and recreate and choose a new habit and
yeah,
reject the other ones that we, as meaningful as they were to us, a couple years ago or 10 years ago or 20 years ago or 40 years ago, we can change today.
Exactly. And one of the things that I struggled with is social media. I mean, it's a big for a lot of us, probably for most of us. Social media is great, but it's also terrible.
Yeah.
And I think most of us spend more time on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or whatever than we probably would like to. It's addictive, and it's a kind of, again, I mean, that's an artificial feedback loop that you sort of get stuck in. And I got really sort of fed up. But I can't. One of the things that was sort of in my head was, well, I use Facebook. I mean, it's like a tool for my work. I mean, that's without Facebook, I can't. I mean, Facebook is the number one platform in Iceland, and everybody's on Facebook. Especially my demographic. I mean, teenagers aren't on Facebook, but I'm not playing for teenagers. So it's kind of hard and I mean, my marketing is Facebook ads and stuff. So I need to kind of be on there. So I can't quit Facebook, but I really needed to cut down on it. So, so one of the things I'd say, all right, so how can I break this habit? Because I found myself, picking up my phone and opening Facebook and spending 10 minutes and then realizing, what the hell am I doing? I'm supposed to be taking care of stuff. So what I did, I just deleted the app from my phone. I said, well, I'll look at it on my browser on my computer. And one thing I started doing that I actually need to get back to doing, because I haven't been good enough about that lately, but is to close the tab. I'll look at Facebook and then close the tab again. And then I can open it up if I need to look at it again. So it's not like, oh, I'm only going to spend 2 hours per day. Nothing like that. It's just, it's not on my phone. So if I need something to do, I find that Instagram doesn't really hold me that much. I'll go and look through Instagram 2 minutes and I'm done for the day. But Facebook hooks me. So it's not on my phone. If I need something to do, if I'm waiting somewhere and I've got nothing to do, I'll open Kindle and read something. Or I'll go look at some news, although I try not to do too much of that because that's depressing. So just that little change is something that broke a nasty habit.
Yeah.
And to your point about, filling our heads with things, in 2008, the whole banking system collapsed in Iceland. We had this huge financial crash. I mean, there was a crash all over the world, and it was especially bad here. But we bounced back through tourism. But during that time, 2008-9, I was like refreshing news media constantly, and I got very angry and very depressed until I just stopped doing it, and I had to just stay away from the news for a few months just to realize that no, that's not the actual world. That's just the news.
Right.
And I think it's so funny that the term fake news has gotten this it's been picked up by a certain section of the world. When I was studying literature and cultural studies, in 2003 or 4, I was actually studying fake news, but in how capitalism and right-wing media actually manipulates the news, and so that in a sense all news is fake because, well, not fake, but it's not real because it's always influenced by advertising and ownership and stuff like that. And this is these are writings from the 80s. This is not new,
right?
And so now it's kind of like, well, I mean, the old kind of fake news is actually completely real, as opposed to what the people screaming fake news are pushing as actual news, which is just fiction. But But news that's a very small part of the world. It's just a piece of it, and it's
well, and like we've been talking about, whatever you feed your mind continues to grow.
Yeah.
And it's not any wonder. And so we're running up in the end of our time here. I'm gonna throw your links back up here for your podcast and your music. This has been a fantastic conversation.
I never knew we were going to go there or to any of those places.
I feel like we should have a follow-up on this whole artist and depression, anxiety, and how people move through this point, because it is a timely topic. It's an important topic, and too many people are getting lost in their feedback loops.
Absolutely.
And I know what it's like to live in a feedback loop, and desperately try to escape. And like you say, days can go by and you sit there and go, I just hope something changes. And it doesn't.
Nope.
It just becomes its own monster. And I think that a lot of high performing people, with a lot of skills, sometimes get lost in those loops. And you just,
I think especially those. So,
yeah. All right. Well, this is amazing. I'm so glad to know you. From a distance.
Likewise.
But we will. We're gonna have follow-up chat on this. To all of our viewers and listeners, Eyvindur is my new friend from Iceland, getting to enjoy the Northern Lights, which they teased us. They said they were gonna maybe be seen in the northern, like mid part of Wisconsin earlier this year. It didn't happen because it was overcast. But maybe someday I'll get to see him.
I'm sure you will.
All right. Well, thanks for joining me. Viewers, listeners, thanks for joining us. This has been another episode of Coffee with Humans, and we'll chat with you next time.
One of the things I love about Coffee with Humans are the raw conversations I get to have, meeting new people just like you. If you or someone you know should be on Coffee with Humans, go to coffeewithhumans.com. Remember, the only rule is no sales calls.
This has been Coffee with Humans. Subscribe to get updates or click to have coffee with me. coffeewithhumans.com.